Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It is the final episode of the view from the opposition for this season, and it's a pleasure to welcome onto the show Ian Croll from the Liverpool Echo, the host of the Royal Blue podcast and Everton show. Ian, welcome onto the Everything is Black and White podcast. How are you keeping? Are you well?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Andrew. Keeping well. Obviously, a big couple of days in the history of Everton Football Club over the past week. I'm sure it doesn't mean a lot to many opposition fans, but it certainly meant a lot to the thousands and thousands of Everton fans that were out on the street and managed to get in the ground. So it's it was a fantastic weekend, and obviously it's the final day coming up on Sunday. So Everton v Newcastle, always an intriguing encounter, certainly over the past couple of years. Looking forward to that one.
Yeah, a lot to play for from Newcastle's point of view. I think we're all hoping, though, that Everton are on the beach. It was a very emotional day against Southampton for you guys as you bid farewell to Goodison Park. Will all of the energy have been kind of sucked out of Everton's players come Sunday after that emotional farewell?
I'm going to give you a simple answer, and that is yes, I think so. So we're recording today on Wednesday the 21st. I literally did a podcast a couple of hours ago, which is going to go out on Friday on the Royal Blue YouTube channel. And I said, or asked the exact same thing. I do believe Everton's players are going to be on the beach, so it'll be hugely beneficial to Newcastle in that run-in. Obviously, a game that is must win. I think Everton are probably the perfect team to Newcastle to play. However, David Moyes probably won't see it that way. Certainly. It's going to be difficult for them to motivate the players. I mean, Everton can't go up in position in the Premier League. They can't go down. Cemented in 13th position. And interestingly enough, again, I'm sure we're going to come on to this with you mentioned Abdoulaye Doucouré earlier, but there's a number of Everton players who are out of contract who could be in that first team on Sunday. Will those players go into a 50-50 challenge, knowing that their careers, not just Everton careers, their football careers could be on the line, and that futures at another club could be on the line? So, yeah, it's an intriguing dynamic and an intriguing situation for Everton players to find themselves in. But I'm sure the Everton fans who travel up to Newcastle on Sunday will certainly want their team to perform well and get a result regardless.
Yes, it's a long list, isn't it, of those who are departing Everton in the summer. A few of those haven't yet had their futures decided. People like Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who, of course, has been linked to Newcastle several times over the past couple of years. Hasn't always gone down well, that link, and I'm sure it'll raise its head again in the next few days, and probably will have the same reaction from the majority of Newcastle fans. But you mentioned there Doucouré. I did an episode on our YouTube channel asking the question to whether Newcastle United should sign Doucouré, given that they're going to be playing in Champions League hopefully next season. They're going to need to build a squad capable of attacking all four fronts, i.e. the domestic cups, the Premier League and European football. It hasn't gone down particularly well. I think it may be more in the middle, though, than people might first think it is when you hear that suggestion. But Doucouré to Newcastle, could you see that one happening?
Not unsurprised you're in football. I think at the end of the day, I think Abdoulaye Doucouré has been a fantastic servant for Everton over the 5 years that he's been there. He's had plenty of ups and downs. He came in during the Carlo Ancelotti era, and then he was kind of completely shunned by Frank Lampard, and then brought back into the fold under Sean Dyche and flourished. That's where he's had his best moments in his Everton career. And although not a traditional number 10, if that's what you want to call it, that's where he's played and plied his trade for Everton Football Club, just behind the striker, and he doesn't play as a traditional number 10. It's not what you would think. So obviously Abdoulaye Doucouré is going to leave Everton after his contract runs out. I think there was a little bit of back and forth from the club and the player over the past couple of weeks. I mean, the player himself appeared on a couple of mainstream and fan podcasts, and we don't know exactly what has happened. However, what we do know is that his contract, Everton had an option to re-sign him on the same terms that he was on previously, and we understand that was obviously in the region of £90,000 to £100,000 a week, and Everton were never ever going to re-sign Abdoulaye Doucouré on those numbers. So the negotiations have obviously taken place, and Everton were looking for reduced terms. And you can understand from Abdoulaye Doucouré's point of view that why, anyone's point of view, doesn't matter what age you are or where you are in life. If someone offers you a pay cut, you're going to be a little bit annoyed. You're going to be probably not as open to it as what you would be. So there obviously hasn't been a compromise with regards to that. And the decision has been made from both parties, mutual consent that he is to leave. And in all fairness, after 5 years at the club, scoring hugely important goals in terms of keeping Everton in the division, now is the time for Abdoulaye Doucouré to go. But the obviously intriguing prospect is, where does he go next? Does he stay in the Premier League, or does he go to Saudi Arabia, which he has been touted for? I can see him certainly doing the job in the Premier League. We had the same discussion in our podcast earlier. Would Abdoulaye Doucouré get into any of the top, say, 6, 7, 8 teams in the Premier League? And on the Royal Blue podcast, we kind of all agreed that he probably wouldn't. However, is there a space for him as a squad player? Interestingly enough, before I came onto this podcast to watch your show, where you talked about Abdoulaye Doucouré, and you mentioned heavily that maybe Newcastle need a squad player. Certainly, you're looking like you're going to be in the Champions League. If you don't get Champions League, you're certainly going to be in the Europa League. So you do need a big squad for that. It's just whether Abdoulaye Doucouré would see himself as a squad player, and whether Newcastle will be willing to match his wages, which, again, from previous experience there, it looks like he doesn't want to drop. So it's an intriguing one.
Yeah, it'll be certainly interesting to see where he does end up. I could see him ending up at Leeds United, a club
we
like
said
that.
The exact same team.
Yeah, but certainly one to watch. And back to Sunday then, as we've said from a Newcastle point of view, we're hoping that Everton will be on the beach, because it's such a huge game for Newcastle United. But you do have a certain Mr. Jordan Pickford between the sticks, and when these two teams meet, all the attention seems to be on him and how he may be impacted by the St James's Park crowd. We've seen him, the best and worst of him, when it comes to his performances up here, i.e. getting impacted in a 3-2 defeat when Everton were going well in the first half, and in the second half we saw a total collapse. And there's been other games where he's put in really decent performances. How important is he to Everton on Sunday?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, funnily enough, I suggested maybe Jordan Pickford shouldn't play on Sunday, just because we know the rivalry between Newcastle and Sunderland, and Jordan Pickford is from Sunderland and is a huge Sunderland fan. Funnily enough, our second string goalkeeper, João Virginia, is out of contract and will be leaving. So it was a kind of, should he play his last game for Everton against Newcastle, and let Jordan Pickford kind of just swan off into the summer, and he can already be on the beach. But I'm sure Jordan Pickford would not thank me for that suggestion. I'm sure he would want to be playing on Sunday. So, I mean, it's a rivalry, isn't it? It's a derby. Jordan Pickford is at the centre of that due to his connections with Sunderland. Look, Jordan Pickford's a fantastic goalkeeper. He's been a fantastic servant for Everton. I hope he continues to do so over the next couple of years. He's made some fantastic saves. It just depends, does the occasion get too big for Jordan Pickford, or does the occasion get too big for the Newcastle fans? I think Newcastle fans have got bigger fish to fry than Jordan Pickford. You need to win to, qualify for the Champions League. That would be, from my point of view, if I was a Newcastle fan or I was an Everton fan in that situation, I would be concentrating on winning that game and completely forget Jordan Pickford. That's how I would see it. But I'm sure that wouldn't be the case. And if football is just it's a rivalry, it's a banter, and as you know, Jordan Pickford likes to get involved in that himself.
Yeah, I think Pickford could be the weak link, but also it has been suggested by one of my co-hosts to actually just totally ignore him, and let the focus, as you've mentioned there, be on what Newcastle need to do, i.e. winning that game. It was certainly interesting as to see whether he manages to make it into the crowd at Wembley on Saturday, given Sunderland are in the playoffs. And I mean, if he's there, then that suggests that he won't be at St James's on Sunday, but certainly another one to watch. Do you think that clubs, and obviously you can answer this from an Everton point of view, but when they have nothing to play for and they go into a game like this against a team with everything to play for, do you think a side like Everton on Sunday do go in and think, do you know what? Yeah, we want to spoil the party here.
I think there's always that, professionalism that you want to win football games. The motivation, I don't know whether it's going to be there. The energy levels, I don't know whether it's going to be there. I mean, Sunday's performance, Everton against Southampton, it wasn't energy sapping as such. It was just the occasion itself, the build up to it all week, the aftermath of it with the celebrations. We obviously, I don't know if you've seen the pictures and the videos of the coach arrival. You know, that all of that can be. It's a good thing, but it can also be draining to an extent, and psychologically, physically. Um, I mean, the one thing I will say that is in Everton's favour, yes, there's a high chance that Everton players will be on the beach, and you know the season's effectively already over for Everton. However, under David Moyes, that's where Everton have picked up most of the points away from home. We've had some fantastic results, if I'm being totally honest, whereas Goodison has kind of been the hindrance. So I'm 50-50. On my podcast earlier, I predicted a 2-0 loss. I was just being totally honest with regards to that, because I just think Newcastle will want it more. And obviously, you know, the Geordie fans are going to be obviously 50 odd thousand in that stadium right behind the team. A win, you know, guarantees Champions League football. Newcastle will be consistently, a number of seasons in Europe, and that only is a good thing for obviously your club, and you're able to build on from that. But again, with Everton's away form and the points that we've picked up and the wins that we've had, playing away suits Everton a lot more. It just depends how Newcastle are gonna want to set up. If they're going to be on the front foot, which you would expect, try and dominate the ball, it could play into Everton's favour if, you know, you hear murmurs of other teams starting to score goals and Newcastle maybe drop down a table a little bit, and then Everton can maybe pick Newcastle off on the counter attack. So that is a positive that Everton could look at doing, because the away form's been fantastic, and we, you know, despite the team having very little pace in it, we do seem to counter attack quite well.
Yeah, I think if I was David Moyes, I'd be putting the message out there to the players, you know, just try and keep it 0-0 to kind of 50, 60 minutes, because I think if it reaches the hour mark and it is 0-0 and other results are going against Newcastle, you know, obviously the nerves, which I think will be there right from the start, will start to get a little bit worse. And that's then maybe when you can ramp up the efforts to try and get to Newcastle. But often I say in these games, I think I've said it for the majority of this season, that the midfield is always key. The midfield is always the battle. But I look at Newcastle's midfield and I compare it to the midfield that started for Everton against Southampton. And really, on paper, you know, no disrespect to Everton at all, you know, Bruno Tonali, and you compare it to Everton's midfield, I mean, there's only one winner there, isn't there?
Yeah, you know, you're not wrong. That's why I think if Everton bypass the midfield and obviously sit back with a slightly low block, maybe not as a low block as what previous Everton manager Sean Dyche would play. However, you know, like I say, I go back to playing on the counter attack. We're not the fastest team in the world, but if we can create the space to get forward quick and exploit those avenues. I mean, one player who's been pivotal to that, if I'm being totally honest, is the Everton striker Beto, who, you know, barely got a sniff under Sean Dyche. It brought in under Sean Dyche, by the way, but barely got a sniff until Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Everton's main striker, was injured. And David Moyes has not really had much of a choice other than to play Beto. However, Beto has now in double figures for the season. Can't actually remember the last time an Everton striker got into double figures for a Premier League season, and he is a player where a counter-attacking game would suit him. He likes the ball. He likes to play off the shoulder of the last defender. He likes the ball, you know, like a through ball. Anything to do with holding the ball up, winning headers, it's not really his game. He will try his best, utmost to do it. He works so hard, closing down, chasing, all that thing that you expect from your striker in terms of energy. But in terms of goal scoring and creating that space in front of goal, Beto, he's not the finished article by any means, but he's certainly a threat. And, you know, if we can play that counter-attacking style and create that space, as Beto will certainly be able to create himself a couple of chances, and you never know.
Well, we're going to talk now about a former Everton man, Anthony Gordon. Lots of debate this week, Ian, on whether he should start on Sunday. His performance against Arsenal wasn't exactly brilliant. He was at fault for the goal, giving the ball away, but a lot of people picking up on his body language and his application against Arsenal. He just doesn't look happy whether he's fully fit. Is one of the questions being raised. Me personally, I wouldn't play him on Sunday. I certainly wouldn't start him. I'd move Harvey Barnes back on the left, Jacob Murphy back on the right, and put Emil Crafton at right back. Obviously, Murphy's been playing right wing back in a 5, but I would go back to 4 and move those players around with Gordon on the bench. I mean, he doesn't seem to handle playing Everton very well at all either, which is another reason why I don't think he's ready to start or right to start. And what have you made of Anthony Gordon in recent weeks? And would you like to see him start on Sunday against Everton?
Yeah, if I'm totally honest, I haven't seen much of Anthony Gordon play over the past couple of weeks and months. I know he's been out injured. Certainly had a number of up and downs this season, and probably his Newcastle career, really. I know he was touted as going to Liverpool last summer. That obviously didn't come to fruition. I'm not entirely sure what the situation was with regards to that, but I know there was a number of PSR issues surrounding Gordon potentially going to Liverpool, and obviously Newcastle trying to generate revenue to obviously make things happen in the squad. Anthony Gordon is a difficult one for me. I was extremely pleased at the time. No, I wasn't pleased that he left when he went to Newcastle. Thought he was a player with huge potential. Maybe didn't quite burst onto the scene as maybe what I would have hoped or what maybe he should have. However, it was enough to earn himself a lucrative move to Newcastle, a huge club. And Newcastle have gone on to do very well. Whether that is down to Anthony Gordon or not, I think a lot of it's down to Eddie Howe and, a couple of other players, Isaac and Joe Linton, just to name a few. When Everton sold Anthony Gordon for 40 million, I was quite surprised at the fee. I think it was a lot more than maybe what he was worth. However, he went for 40 million and he's done relatively okay for Newcastle in the first instance. And then, he was getting talked about going to Liverpool for 70, 80 million. I know he's a Liverpool lad. I know he supports Liverpool. I don't know whether his head has been turned to an extent. He thinks there's a potential move for Liverpool in the summer. If I was from a Liverpool point of view, if they've got two left-sided midfielders who are far superior than Anthony Gordon, in my opinion, Diaz and Gakpo. I know that Anthony Gordon's probably quite young and he can progress. He's got the potential to do a lot better. But Liverpool have gone on to win the league with those two players who have been integral to that team. So I guess it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if Anthony Gordon did make the move to Liverpool. However, this Sunday, if he does play, I don't necessarily see Anthony Gordon faltering in any way due to it because of playing Everton. I think he'll have the Geordie fans on his side in the thousands, and I just think that if he plays, he should just take it as a normal game, and again, not worry that he's playing Everton. I know he missed that penalty earlier in the season, but let's face it, he had 40,000 Evertonians screaming against him, and quite clearly the pressure did get too much to him at that time, taking that penalty, and maybe he shouldn't have taken that penalty. But Anthony Gordon he's got talent. I'm not saying he hasn't. Whether he's a world beater now or whether he could become a world beater, still a lot of question marks with regards to that as a player.
Well, hopefully, if he does feature, he can help Newcastle United to victory. Who will be playing right back for Everton? Because Coleman started, didn't he? But then he came off after 18, 19 minutes. Yeah. Ashley Young replaced him against Southampton. So will it be Ashley Young at right back?
More than likely Ashley Young. James Coleman obviously James Coleman is Everton's club captain, so it was only right that he was able to lead the team out against Southampton for the last ever men's first team game at Goodison Park. He went off injured after 18 minutes or so, but James Coleman's not match fit at all, but he deserved the right to lead Everton out onto the pitch. If I'm going to be totally honest, if the game meant something on Sunday, I don't think Seamus probably would have played. So he got the chance, and everyone applauded him, and that was fantastic. Ashley Young, yes, probably will play. There is options that Everton and David Moyes have got. Nathan Patterson could go in there. I'm not entirely sure on his fitness actually, but he could potentially go in there. And the other option that we do have is to push Jake O'Brien back out on the right hand side of the fence, who has predominantly played as a right back the back end of this season with Everton, and then just play Michael Keane for one final game for Everton. However, you are probably right. I think Ashley Young will play, and Jake O'Brien and Branthwaite will stay as the two centre-halves.
And that was going to be my next question. Are you expecting Branthwaite to be fit? Because he also went off with 15 minutes or so left against Southampton, and a little bit of doubt, at least from other outlets, that he might feature on Sunday.
Yeah, it's a good point. I completely forgot that he went off, and he looked like he was nursing maybe a niggling injury. So I guess we'll only find out probably on Friday when Everton hold their press conference with David Moyes. He'll probably give the fitness updates. So I'm not entirely sure when this podcast is going to go out, but I'm sure David Moyes won't give too much away in his press conference. However, if Branthwaite is not fit and unable to play, I wouldn't be surprised to see Michael Keane go in there alongside Jake O'Brien. So I guess you can't really second guess or predict Everton's lineup, because there are a few niggling injury worries that we need to take care of. But I would expect, like I say, Ashley Young. If everyone's fit, I would expect Ashley Young, Jake O'Brien, Branthwaite and Vitaly Mykolenko as the back four.
How do you think that back four, if indeed that is how Everton lineup would handle, let's say Gordon does start on the left and it's, I don't know, Murphy on the right and Isak is past fit to play as well up top? I mean, do you see that being an easy afternoon for Everton's back four?
No, it's not. It's not an easy afternoon at all. I think one thing under former Everton manager Sean Dyche was that Everton were really solid defensively and still kept a number of clean sheets. We went through a period, even in the darkest moments of this season, where we managed to get 3 goalless draws, I think it was, against City, Arsenal and Chelsea. So we got picked up 3 points, but that was always one of being the strongest points of Everton's team. I think Jared Branthwaite, James Tarkowski are huge reasons for that. Jordan Pickford as well. So James Tarkowski obviously out injured now for, he was out injured for the rest of the season and may even struggle to come back for pre-season. So that partnership is what has flourished, and that is what has helped Everton to keep the clean sheets that it has and keep Everton in the lead effectively. So it has been disrupted slightly. However, the disruption has been eased because Jake O'Brien is the one he's played as the right back. I mean, he's not an orthodox right back at all, Jake O'Brien. Obviously, you see him, he's over 6 foot. He's not the usual full-back who'll go bombing down the wing and put, a pinpoint cross in, although he has done that over a couple of times. He's been fantastic there, but he's moved back into his natural position now. And for us, from an Everton point of view, what we want now is for Jake O'Brien to kind of build a partnership with Jared Branthwaite, because that would be what our future centre-back pairing would be. Again, there's a lot of things that could happen. James Tarkowski has been fantastic. He's been the captain for Everton this season, and his partnership with Branthwaite, as I mentioned, is what's flourished. There's another reason Jared Branthwaite could potentially leave the club if an offer comes in for him. So, but Everton's back four is one of the positives of the team. It's not going to be an easy afternoon or evening on Sunday, but I would expect, the back four to give us the good as they get.
Well, we'll wait and see. Hopefully, they do have a bad afternoon and Isak is past fit and can get closer to that 30-goal barrier that we all thought he would absolutely smash through, but he's unfortunately not managed to add too many goals to his tally since the Cup final. Just a reminder that, ladies and gents, that this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do hit the link in your podcast description box and take advantage of an exclusive offer where you can sign up for a discounted plan. And there's no risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So protect yourself and support the podcast at the same time. Let's talk about Calvert-Lewin then, because he has been linked to Newcastle United. His future is up in the air. He is out of contract. We don't know whether he's going to sign a new deal. We don't know whether he's going to leave on a free. I mean, could you see him doing a job at Newcastle United?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm going to be totally honest, I thought Dominic Calvert-Lewin should have left Everton last summer. I know he was heavily linked, and one of the reasons that it didn't happen was down to Yakuba Minteh. I'm not entirely sure of the full reason as to why it didn't happen, but again, a lot of PSR wrangling last summer with regards to all that. The one thing I'll say about Dominic Calvert-Lewin, he never gives up. He's a talented footballer. Whether he is a clinical goal scorer has always remained the big question. You'd only have to look at his record. He's spent 8 years now at Everton, and although being the fourth highest Premier League goal scorer in Everton Football Club's history, he's struggled with injury. Even when he's come back, he's gone through, huge barren spells of 17, 18 games without a goal. However, in his defence, he has played in an extremely poor team who don't create many chances. And I think this is where an Abdoulaye Doucouré came into the fold, where under Sean Dyche, he was able to bring Abdoulaye Doucouré back in, and that helped Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Abdoulaye Doucouré was not a striker as such. He was a number 10 slash second striker, and that enabled us to, knock the ball forward for Abdoulaye Doucouré to win headers, bring the ball down, hold the ball up, all those cliche type of things. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin did the exact same, and it was just that kind of partnership that helped Everton. So Dominic Calvert-Lewin playing in a team who would create more chances, create more opportunities for him. It could be an intriguing prospect. Obviously, I'm sure you would agree with this, foresee him taking Isak's place. That's not going to happen. Depends what Calvert-Lewin wants at this point in his career. He, in the past, has been an injury-prone striker and then managed to keep himself fit. And that period came under Sean Dyche, where he virtually played every game. However, he got injured again back in February against Everton, played Brighton in a 1-0 win, and that was David Moyes' first away game, which Everton did win, but he hasn't featured since, really. So it's been in a position where now David Moyes has come in and Everton have been a little bit more open. They may have conceded more goals, but they've created more chances. They certainly scored more goals. That's where Beto has flourished. It's just been a little bit unlucky for Calvert-Lewin that he hasn't been on the positive end, and that because he's been injured. So does he want to go to Newcastle to play second fiddle? Because he's going to play second fiddle to Isak, thinking that it might benefit him to an extent because he doesn't have to play every game, and recovery periods will be longer. But obviously Newcastle, again, we go back to Newcastle being in Europe, whether that's the Champions League or Europa League, the games will still come thick and fast. And as you mentioned in your podcast earlier, that Newcastle are going to need a bigger squad. Having a bigger squad comes with maybe less quality sometimes. Dominic Calvert-Lewin's got quality. It's just question marks over his future and whether he's just got that clinical quality that you need.
I think his fitness is the biggest concern for Newcastle United fans, because we've got Callum Wilson at the moment, whose quality is there. We know he's got it. He's a fantastic striker. He's carried the responsibility of wearing the number 9 shirt really well, but he can't keep fit at all. And I think if Newcastle were to release him in the summer only to replace him with Calvert-Lewin, someone whose injury record isn't quite as bad as Wilson's, but it's not exactly a shining example of a fit striker. It probably wouldn't go down too well. I can understand where the kind of skepticism comes when that deal is re-emerges, and I think it will do as well over the next few days, especially if he is indeed released on a free. Then no doubt Newcastle United will be strongly linked to him once again. For me, it's not a deal that I can see happening. It's not a deal that I would want to happen. I think Newcastle need a striker who can stay fit and can push Alexander Isak as well. Not just be there to replace him, but actually push him for that spot. Not going to be a cheap find, but I think they are going to have to spend big in that department. So one to watch in the summer, but I just can't see it being Calvert-Lewin. In terms of Everton on Sunday, you've mentioned that they're probably going to try and counter-attack Newcastle. What would you describe as their biggest weakness that Newcastle can exploit?
Just possession, lack of possession on the ball, really. If Newcastle can dominate the ball and possession, it could be and create chances with that. Sorry, because I do expect Newcastle to dominate the ball anyway, and set pieces as well. To be honest, if Newcastle can make the most of set pieces, it's something that we've struggled with over the past couple of weeks and months. So I don't know what Newcastle's set piece record is. Certainly this season, I know they've got a couple of big players in the height and stuff like that. But I mean, let's face it, Everton's weaknesses, we're 13th in the league, which is actually quite respectable for us at this moment in time. We're obviously looking for a brighter future with next season with Bramley Moore and the new stadium and stuff like that. But I think our biggest weakness, as I've mentioned, is that we could be on the beach and our season could be over anyway. So Everton could potentially be the best team that Newcastle could have played at this moment in time.
Fingers crossed they are distracted and they are already thinking about their summer holidays, because that would give Newcastle United a massive boost and, hopefully help them get them over the line to the Champions League for next season. Just give me briefly, Ian, the man that you're most fearing in black and white. Who are you scared of? Who's going to keep you awake on Friday and Saturday before the game kicks off on Sunday?
Yeah, Isak. I mean, what a player. I mean, it's funny that you're talking about, Newcastle signing a second striker as such to be back up for Isak. We're just after a striker, a first team striker to score goals. So you certainly in a privileged position. As mentioned, we've managed to get Beto scoring goals. Whether he stays next season is another question. I don't know whether offers are going to come in for him and whether even David Moyes actually fancies him. But everyone is in the market for a striker this season, and Newcastle have got that striker. He's an absolute worldie of a player. He scores goals. I don't know whether there's a question mark over his fitness. I don't know if that is the case. I know he has been injured once or twice, but for me, he does seem like he plays a lot anyway. And with him in the team, you're always going to create chances and score goals.
Yep, indeed. And hopefully, as I've said, he'll be back in the starting 11 on Sunday and he can fire Newcastle United to victory. Score prediction then, Ian? How is it going to go?
Yeah, I can't change my mind from what I said in the Royal Blue podcast earlier, which is going out on Friday. So I said it was going to be an honest 2-0 defeat to Everton. So no doubt Newcastle will be in the Champions League next season.
Well, I'm hoping that your prediction is correct. I mean, I don't really care what the score is, as long as Newcastle United win. It could be 1-0 off the backside of Fabian Schär. That would certainly suit me. I'm hoping, though, Newcastle United can really romp to victory. 3 or 4 goals and would be perfect to send the fans off into the summer really, really happy. But at the end of the day, victory is what matters. I'm going to bet on them to do it as well. I think it's going to be a nervy afternoon, but if we can set the tone right from the start, get an early goal, then I think it'll be a lot easier than if it's still 0-0 on the hour mark. But we'll wait and see what happens. Ian, thank you very much for popping on and providing the view from the opposition. To you guys watching and listening, thank you as always. Leave us a rating and review, hit thumbs up, hit subscribe. Do hit that link in the podcast description box to take advantage of a discounted offer on your NordVPN plan. And for myself, I will see you guys very soon.